Dennis is the director of the Center for Competitiveness and Prosperity Research. Sounds like the kind of place you want to hang out.
Yeah.
At the William Seidman Research Institute at the W.P. Carey School of Business. You have studied the Valley's economy for years, and that's why we really wanted to have you on. Would you say, now that I really feel like with the introduction of Taiwan Semi, and then the long-standing relationship that a number of Valley communities have with Intel, I feel like we have kind of become certainly a national leader in the semiconductor game. Maybe you might even say a world leader. So where does that place your thinking in terms of the future for us here in the Valley?
Well, guys, this is a very important part of the Arizona economy, the Phoenix economy. And it's been a long time coming. Motorola moved research operations here in 1948 with an eye to sell to the military. And that was the beginning of it. And we've had many iterations, with Taiwan Semi being the latest. But we've got two big giants, Intel and Taiwan Semi, hitting on pretty much on all cylinders right now. And so, no, this is a big deal. It's a big deal for the Arizona economy and especially the Phoenix economy.
Who deserves the credit for bringing Taiwan Semi here? If I recall, that was during the Ducey administration when those first announcements came in. Was it the business community? Was it the governor at the time? How did it really come together?
Great leadership, and I would actually back up and go another governor and go back to Governor Brewer, where some of the initial visits started, and we planted the seeds and made this argument that it made sense for Taiwan Semi to move off the island with all of its operations and set up operations in the United States. And I suspect their first thought was, how can we afford this? And some tax incentives were created. The education community came in. My employer, Michael Crow, worked very, very hard to demonstrate the engineering capabilities of ASU. You know, I think we're Intel's biggest employer, and I think we aim to be TSMC's biggest employer here in Phoenix, certainly. And so it was a big, big consortium of people, and it took about 15 years to come to the fore. It's very, very important to the West Valley. One of the shortcomings in Phoenix Metro has been economic development of the West Valley. If you see the traffic flows, people drive west to east for jobs every morning. And there's going to be less and less of that because the jobs are growing quickly in the West Valley.
You know, I listened to a podcast not too long ago, and they labeled the valley the Silicon Desert. And I thought that was really interesting because we always think of Silicon Valley in California. But there's a couple of reasons they were talking about, and maybe you can kind of explain this a little bit. One is that we're very friendly. It's a friendly state for some of these businesses. And in terms of disaster resistance, meaning that we don't have hurricanes. I mean, we have a monsoon, but we also don't have a lot of rain and weather systems that move through. Are those two of the main reasons why maybe we're so attractive to these companies?
Sure. Historically, historically, it's been affordable land, affordable labor, reasonable prices in terms of electricity and energy. And then this dry climate is really good for the manufacture of these materials.
What does it mean for people who live here? I know that we see all these big companies, AI companies, semiconductor companies come in and they make a lot of money. It's very valuable for them as a company. For us as Arizonans, why is this important for us to be on board here with all of these companies moving in? What does it mean to us and for the local economy?
Well, think about it really very simply in terms of, you can think of a bathtub analogy or whatever, but where does our money flow from? If we just focus on local businesses, local service providers, or even retail, When we buy goods and services on retail, the money flows out of the state. Typically, it goes out to the owners of the retail establishments. When people work in export-based industries like semiconductors, money is made, yes, indeed. Money is made on the sale of those semiconductors, and it goes to pay big salaries to those manufacturing workers. And that's how that money flows into the valley. And it's that money that flows in that sustains everything else. So even if you're running a pizza shop or a restaurant or a hair salon, you ought to be very happy to see these businesses thrive, because that's where the money comes from for your customers to purchase your services.
Well, we got 2 minutes left, so I've been wanting to ask you the following question. Despite the fact that we are becoming sort of a world hub for semiconductor, why is the Phoenix metro area not seen internationally as a major market? You go to Atlanta, you go to LA, you go to Seattle, you go to Dallas, Minneapolis, you can catch international flights to almost anywhere. We have 5 million people in this city, and what do we have? I think we have 2 flights a day to London, maybe 1 to Paris.
They added the one to Taiwan.
We got that Taiwan flight. Why is that happening?
Well, it takes time. It takes world headquarters. Atlanta's got more headquarters than Phoenix does. We've developed more or less as a regional hub, not an international hub for air travel. But when I travel, people want to ask questions about Phoenix. They're curious about Arizona, curious about our lifestyle. Everybody wants to talk about water and climate, but we've done wonders there. And we continue to process, to expand, to try to think through even like our water problems. I'm very impressed with this negotiation with San Diego, where we're swapping out California water rights with helping them to finance their desalinization plant. I mean, that's the kind of forward thinking that we need. We need leaders, that think about expansion.
Oh, yeah.
If you look historically, guys, when we built Palo Verde,
Dennis, we're up against a break.
We had no need for that energy at Palo Verde. We built it because we were.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis Hoffman. Great input today,
Amazing,
Celeste.
Dennis. Have a great day, my friend. We'll see you later.